Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to learn about activity tables. So what our lesson focus for today is going to be looking at is how we use activity tables to build networks. So essentially we're looking at a certain set of activities and we're kind of in a table format and we're trying to build a network based off that. That is essentially what we're trying to do. So let's look at a nice and easy one. This isn't the correct terminology, but I've used it anyway. An order of operation. So typically we use that for plus, minus, times, and divide, and what order we're doing it for a number sentence. But let's say we're just getting ready for school. Okay? Generally, most people wake up and then they get dressed. Some people skip breakfast and they catch the school bus straight away. Others get dressed, have breakfast, and then catch the school bus. You can see with this basic network, there's activities in a certain direction, but people can take a different order and approach. They start at the same point and they end at the same point, but they can go different avenues in different ways. So this is kind of what we're kind of doing, but with an activity table, instead of the activity being a vertex, it's the edge. So that's a slight difference. But if we can understand this general concept, this is what we're going for. Another little pre-skill that you kind of need is just forecasting what something's going to be looking like in the future. So with this one, look, 2 times a number equals 6. You can just tell me, oh, okay, that equals 3. That's fine. 12 divided by 3, that's 4. Okay. With this one, I've got 2 times a number plus 1 equals 13. And you're looking at that and go, well, if I take away 1 from both sides, that's going to be 12. That'll be 2 times something equals 12. That must be 6. So you can figure it out like that, or you can just kind of look at it and just figure it out in your head. And that forecasting skill of just kind of figuring it out and understanding it and having that fluency is important when we're trying to use activity tables to build these networks, because some things aren't quite clear and you've got to kind of imagine it in your head and then write it down. So this is what our set list of activities tables we're going to follow. So these are our instructions. This is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. We're going to label the first and last vertices as start and finish. Okay, we can do that. We're going to represent activities as edges and not vertices. Like my previous example, that was just an example so you guys can get used to it. Connect activities that have no prerequisites, I can never say that word, to the start box. Okay, so this will make a little bit more sense in a moment, but different activities must be have a prerequisite activity. That is, it must follow a certain other activity. Anything that does not starts on our starting vertex. Begin activities with the same predecessor, I can't even say it, predecessor, oh, sorry guys, the same predecessor, there we go, at the same vertex. So that is, if something has the same predecessor, I can't even say it, is that you need to start on that one. So how do I say this? If we have, let's say this activity is vertex and they both link to that to 2 other vertices, then they both must come back to this. Okay. Again, this is a little hard to understand without actually doing it. Ensure that any 2 vertices are not connected by multiple edges. That's basically saying if we have 2 edges that kind of go back to a vertex and they shouldn't be there, then we've got a problem. Okay, but again, this will make more sense when we actually look at an activity table like so. Okay, here's our activity table, and we want to build a network based off this. Okay, so our first rule, let's get a piece of paper here. Our first rule is that we want to start and finish. Okay, so let's start like this. Let's do a little, let's turn this light on so you guys can see a little bit better. Whoop, went blue. Start right there. And if we're looking at it, these ones do not have a predecessor. So A, B, and C. We got it. We can say it now, predecessor. So A, B, and C all come from the start vertex. And they're going in this direction. So we'll call it A, B, and C. There we go. Now, if we're looking at this one, the D activity, remember these are activities, not vertices. The D activity must come from A. So after our A, there must be a D. Whoops, I drew an arrow. I shouldn't have done that. I'll get back to that later. E comes after B. Oh, I did it again. And finally, C comes after F. Sorry, F comes after C. Now, we've got a little bit of a problem here. This should be E. Is that this one, G, this is followed by E and F. So what we've got a problem here is these really, I should not draw these arrows, let's just continue these lines. And these have to come to one spot and then followed by G. Because if we're looking at this, G must come after E and F. Therefore, E and F must link to G. This one, H, comes after D. So let's draw a H. That's better. Don't draw the arrow. Learn from my mistake. And then I must have to come after G and H. So these must link as well. So let's link them. And then that would be I. And that's our last one. So therefore, it must go to our finish. Okay, now I didn't do the best example there. Learn from my mistake. You probably shouldn't draw these arrows straight away. In fact, they are kind of telling you the direction it's going. But it's better to just draw straight lines like that and have your activity, such as H. So, but what you can kind of take away from this is that we're trying to build our network by interpreting this table. So let's have a go at something a little bit harder. Okay, we've got this one, our activity, our predecessor, and our time. I can say it now. Now, with these, you actually want to include them with the activity. So these are some type of measurement usually. So kilometers, time, whatever, they've used time here. So we're going to put these numbers next to our letters when we say it. We actually draw it. So let's draw this. So we have our start. And A doesn't have a predecessor. Okay? There's no predecessor for A, so A must come off this one. So let's just draw a line. Let's not do anything rash. Let's not draw an arrow. So A, and let's do a little comma, and it's 2, because this 2 here is our time. So it has some kind of value to it. Now, if we're looking at this, now this is where this forecasting skill I had mentioned earlier, when we're looking at those numbers just here, we're kind of making forecasting what these numbers would be. This is where this skill really comes into play. It's like, well, I got B and C here, and they both, and A is the predecessor for both of them. So what I must do is I must split this apart and go B and C. So let's do that. You've got to be able to see that from just by looking at the table. So let's call this B, and that has a value of 3. And let's call this C, and that has a value of 4. Just putting commas in there to separate them. Now, have we got anything else? Okay, let's kind of look here. We've got D coming off C, so D comes off here. We've got E coming off B, okay. And then we've got F coming off D, so that links there, which comes off C. Okay, so we're going to have some kind of linkage around here, and then F. Okay, so it looks like there's going to be a link back, so it looks like they're going to come back to each other at G, but it looks like one is going to have one more stop before the other, or one more edge. So let's just follow this, and a helpful little guide is try not to draw, just allow your arrows to be a little bit more fluid. Like draw them straight, but they can curve at the end because you don't need necessarily make a mistake, but you might need just to curve them a little bit. And this is kind of rough drafting. I guess you could flip it the other way and you might have it different interpretations, but essentially you're trying to draw this the best you can without a mistake. So the best advice that I can give is just don't have the arrows on the end like I did with my last example. That was actually a poor example. So D comes from C. Let's do that. Whoa. D, 2. And E comes from B. Okay. Let's just draw it like that for now. So E, 5. Now F comes from D, so it comes from here. And we know they link back, so let's kind of do a little link back just now. And F is 2. Okay, now G is E and F. So just here, we've got to link these two together. So this is where I said not to end it with the arrows. Let's just bring that, or let's extend the line to here, and then we will carry out our G, which is 1. So that's a comma. And then we should have our finish. Just there. So what we've got is we've used our table, which is our lesson focus, to build our network. This is the thing that we're trying to build. We're trying to look at this table and go, okay, what's the activity? What's the predecessor? What's the value that they're trying to give here? And we end up with this kind of table, and you've got to kind of use a little bit of logic involved here. It's just not maths. It's a lot of logic, it's a lot of forecasting, and you're trying your best to visualize it in your head and trying to put it down on paper. And you might not get it at the first go, and you don't make full commitments of drawing the arrows at the end. What I would do once you've done this is go back in and fill in directions, directional arrows into it. So then you go, okay, there's 2 different paths here and they both end up at the same spot. Just like our very first example of getting ready for school, that you would get dressed, some people would have breakfast and then get in the car, and then other people, or get in the bus, and other people would get dressed and just hop straight in the bus. So you can see that these are some kind of networks that are going somewhere. They don't have to end up on the same, they do have to end up on the same spot, sorry. At this point in time they do, but they generally follow the activities along the edges. So this is what we're doing today. I'm just going to finish it up there, and hopefully this has been helpful.